I'm Allison for Leading Edge Dog Show Academy, and today's tutorial is around scissors, shears, whatever you want to call them. There's many different types. And one of the problems is when it comes to talking about shears, scissors, is that there isn't an industry standard as to what we call some of them. So that's where it can get a little bit confusing. So we're just going to give a general overview of scissor types as well as some kind of maintenance rules that you should maybe follow that is just going to extend the life of your shear and go from there. You can look on our equipment series where we're going to dive deeper into each of the scissor types, but for today's equipment series, we're just going to do the general overview. So here we go. Of course, when we start out, everybody wants to have a straight shear, right? So a straight shear does not have a curve to it. It's simply a straight shear. And you know, if you're scissoring a big scissored type breed, a Black Russian Terrier, a Poodle, you're probably going to want a longer, straighter blade. And if you are maybe trimming feet, trimming whiskers, or trimming small dogs, Chihuahuas, etc., you're going to want a very short blade. So here is a short blade, here is even a shorter blade, even though this is a curve, still a nice short blade for feet. So really, first thing you're going to think about is you're going to need a straight shear for almost every breed. And in that straight shear, how much acreage are you covering? You know, the bigger the dog, basically, the bigger the shear you will want. Now, of course, shears are very much personal preference. Maybe you have small hands. Maybe you get hand fatigue quite easily. Then even though you're doing a bigger dog, you might want a slightly smaller shear than maybe I would use on a big dog. So it's personal preference, but also how you physically are and how you feel about that shear. Now, some shears are heavier, some shears are lighter. I personally like a heavier shear for doing my basic work because I find the weight of the shear helps kind of plow through that coat, helps to cut the coat. And then when I'm doing my finishing work where I'm working on the very end of the coat, just making it look beautiful, I like a lighter shear. Now, whatever kind of shear you are going to use, the most important thing is how do I hold on to that shear, right? This is where people make their biggest mistakes. Most people are going to start holding their shear with like their index finger and their thumb. That's how they think that they should hold on to a shear. This is wrong. And why is it wrong? Well, when we look at the tip of the shear, see how much the tip of the shear actually moves, right? And this also creates a lot of hand fatigue because I'm opening and closing my entire hand. We also don't hold it on our middle finger for the same reason. We don't have as much support, and I'm already getting like, you know, kind of pain through here because of this awkward angle. So the correct way to hold any shear, straight, curve, thinner, chunker, blender, fishtail, whatever you want to call them, is to put your ring finger through this hole, and then you hold the shear cradled in your hand. And you just use your thumb. Your fingers don't have to be all the way through the finger holes. It's again, personal preference, but most people just let that scissor kind of rest in your hand and they just simply move their thumb up and down to open and close that shear. But the more important part is then my shear is just cradled by my whole hand and the tip of the shear isn't going back and forth like this, like when it was when I was holding it with my index finger, right? So just as quickly, scissoring each time, you can see how much steadier that shear is. Now that's a straight shear. When we go into a curved shear, again, curved shears also come in many lengths. We're gonna hold them the same way. When I'm doing my tutorials, I'll say when you're holding the shear the correct way, that means that the tip of the curved shear is pointing towards the dog. And I'll say backwards. I sometimes say incorrect, which I shouldn't say it that way because I'm still holding it the same way in my hand, which is correct. But that means that the tip of the shear is facing towards the groomer's face. And this is a very useful way to use the curved shear. It can really help you get some bulking out, can help make some lines look smoother, can help in tuck-ups and curved areas, can help set the angulation on almost any breed or coat type. So that's another thing about curved shears. Now we are going to move into a classic thinning shear. So a thinning shear today is going to have one sharp straight blade and one blade where there are teeth in the blade. Now you could also use a double thinner. A double thinner is going to have both blades have teeth in them. They're not as popular now as they used to be. Most thinning shears have this one cutting blade and then one blade that has teeth in it. So this is a thinning shear. We use these a lot on our smooth coated dogs when we're taking out cowlicks. We use them on our double coated dogs. We'll use them a little bit to tidy up some wire coated breeds, but we don't really use them on our scissored coat types. We might use them on our rustic coat types. We'll also use them on our setters and our spaniels. So then the last kind of shear type that I'm going to talk to you today about is a blender, chunker, they're sometimes called. The difference between these is these also have one straight blade that cuts and one blade that has teeth, but very carefully, if you look at the teeth of this blade, it's going to have a fishtail appearance. So a thinner is going to have a tooth that comes up and has a notch at the end, so kind of like a V or U-shaped notch, but a blender or chunker, which I like to call fishtail because I think it's more true to what they actually are going to have a fishtail look to the ends of these teeth. So that's kind of the difference between a thinner and a chunker blender, which I like to call a fishtail. So what's a chunker, what's a blender? I mean, I think the less amount of teeth, the more the teeth are spaced, makes it more of a chunker. The closer together is actually a true blender. And you can even get a scissor that does have that fishtail appearance, but the teeth are very close together, and this is like very much a blender. We even call this one a magic eraser because it can erase all scissor marks. So you could use a chunker blender fishtail eraser on your scissored coat types, but you could really use them on almost any coat type, including smooth. Your scissors, especially your straights or your curves, are going to come with either a beveled edge or a convex edge, right? And what is the difference between those edges? So a beveled edge, if you looked at them very, very closely with your glasses on, with a magnifier, the edge is going to kind of come up and kind of almost have a flat spot to it and then go down the other side of the shear. A convex edge is going to come to a point, like a very, very discernible point, which makes those shears a little more susceptible to getting burrs if you do drop them, but they might leave a better finish on a dog, right? Where the beveled edge is a little more forgiving, especially to a new groomer, and can maybe help you get through those big chunky coats just a little bit easier. Now, the other difference is that a beveled edge can be finished and sharpened on a machine, and a convex edge needs to be finished in the factory and sharpened by hand. So that is typically why our convex edge shears are typically more expensive and typically more expensive to be sharpened. So that's just a general overview of scissors. Now we're going to get into just a little bit of maintenance, and this would be kind of for all scissor types again. So say something horrible happens and your scissors get kicked off a table, you drop them, they hit the floor, any which way. So typically what happens is the edge of obviously when that happens, your scissor can completely disintegrate, completely fall apart. I have seen that happen. That's not super common, but it will happen, in which case you just cry, gather all the pieces and buy a new pair of shears, okay? I'm really sorry that happened to you. That does happen once in a while. But for your typical shear that maybe you just drop, it just gets lightly, and you go to close it, what happens is this edge, right? This convex or concave or beveled edge gets a little burr in it. So a little part of that edge fell over. And so when you go to close the shear, it locks. It kind of stops at that spot. So I like to pick up that shear and I'm going to close it as gently as possible, especially when I get to that burr area. And then I'm going to press my shear together and open it up slowly. And I'm going to do that a few more times until I can kind of feel that they close again. Now, if you're very lucky, your scissor might work at this point. But typically your scissor has now been at least salvaged or is hopefully salvageable. You take the scissor, you put it somewhere special, and you get it to a good sharpener or back to the manufacturer for them to sharpen it. Personally, if you have spent a lot of money on a really good pair of shears that have that convex edge, and you take them to a sharpener who doesn't have a price difference between a beveled edge and a convex edge, I would make sure that you had a very good recommendation for that sharpener before you continued with them, because if they're taking your convex shears and sharpening them on a machine, then they then become beveled shears and maybe they cannot be salvaged. I have personally had this happen to me. So something to just be aware of while you're out there, right? So the same thing, like if, you know, my curves or my fishtails or my thinners were dropped, I would do the same thing. I would close them gently, push those blades together, and then open them gently as well, hoping that they can then be salvaged, okay? So now we're gonna move on to maintenance. What should you do, etc., to extend the life of your shears? So no matter what type, I encourage you to do the same thing. Most shears are gonna come with like some kind of microfiber cleaning type cloth. If not, pretty much, you know, you can get one anywhere. You probably have some in your drawer from some kind of glasses you have, right? Most shears are also going to come with some kind of shear oil. If not, you can buy it maybe from the same vendor. Maybe some brands come with it. So in my experience, some brands come with it, some brands don't. Really doesn't mean anything as to whether they do or don't. Just I'm seeing more and more brands are actually having some scissor oil. And then cases. Do yourself a favor. If your shears don't come with a case, buy yourself a case, right? So there's many different kinds. Like this one will hold 4 pairs of shears. This one will hold 2, has a little divider, has this little silica packet in it. You can keep that or toss it out, however you feel about that, to help if you live in a really damp environment. You might want to keep that in there. Some of them might also come with like this little kind of scissor condom protector, whatever you might want to call it. But at the very, very, very least, you want something that's going to keep the tips of your blades together, but a case is obviously the way you want to go. Some, again, scissor brands are going to come with a case. Some have those cardboard cases where the top flaps down, and those are okay in the meantime, but you know, I encourage you to put rubber bands or something around them because that flap can open up and then they fall on the floor. But most of them are going to have some, you know, kind of zip around type action. These are the kind I like, all right? But before we put our scissors in the case, again, no matter what kind of shear, I want you to take your little microfiber cloth and I want you to just open it up and just, you know, quickly just give them a little wipey-do. Because not only is there a little bit of hair stuck in there, but there can be a little bit of dander, a little bit of just debris, even if you don't think it, maybe it's a little bit of debris from product. And over time, especially on those convex edges, that's gonna build up and that's gonna start to make your scissors dull, right? So you're gonna do that. Then you're gonna take your scissor oil, and this one just has this handy dandy little, I don't know, swab on the end. You're gonna open it up and just put like, you know, just on either side of the apex of the scissor. Close it a few times. If you think you got any excess, you could give it another wipe. You could slip it into your little blade keeper. Then I'm gonna slip it into my case. This one has little elastics to keep my shears in place. Close it up, zip it around. Now we know that our shears are safe. They're gonna be safe in my tack box, safe in my drawer, safe not only from being dropped, from being scratched, but safe from environmental debris getting in there. Maybe use a pumice stone on some of your dogs. You don't want that grit getting in with your scissors. So anytime that you can have yourself a case that keeps your shears nice and neat and tidy, I encourage you to use this one. This one has a little flap. You can just keep your microfiber cloth in there and your oil, close it up, zip it all up. And once again, we know that our shears are nice and safe, protected from absolutely anything. So thank you so much for joining us for today's equipment series video. We are going to do more equipment series videos on shears. We're going to go deeper into each shear type, but we just wanted to give you a general overview of what the different shear types are, what they look like, how to hold them, and how to extend the life of your shears. We hope that helps. Hi guys. Thanks for joining us on another video in our equipment series. Like we said, there is a lot of equipment here that we need to cover. So if we haven't yet hit the piece of equipment that you're yearning to learn about, let us know in the comments below and we will add it to our very next one. As well, don't forget to like and subscribe, because then you won't miss out on a video that maybe you've requested or something that you want to know about. We are always here for you to answer any of your questions about these or any other products, any other thing that you need to know to take great care of your dog, whether you're in the salon, going to a dog show, or just trying to get your dog groomed at home in the easiest and most efficient way possible. So thanks again for joining us in our equipment series.